Do you like to play basketball?
No, I should do really. You know, when I go to like Asia, they all look at me and like point at me and go, basketball. It's like no.
Do you like to play? You're all immersed in boxing your whole life, your family legacy. But what other sports do you like besides
So I
boxing?
played a lot of cricket, which is like it's nothing like baseball, but it's the best way I
I watched a cricket thing. It takes like 3 days.
It does.
To play.
Sometimes it does. Yeah. I had 3 amateur fights.
Really?
Yeah, and I was absolutely terrible. I did win them, but I was terrible. I loved playing soccer, but I was terrible. I played rugby, and also like working in sports and doing what I do, representing athletes, is a great job for a failed athlete.
You
Do you know
know,
what
I
So
think you're right.
I love sports. Like I love playing it. I love watching it. So my job is like a dream because the next best thing to being one is representing one. So
That's what happened with Phil Jackson with the Lakers and the Bulls. He
Yeah,
wasn't
yeah,
the best
that's correct,
player.
Yeah.
But here you have a full plate as usual. Terrific fights on DAZN. Matchroom is very, very busy today. We're at Chavez Jr. Danny Jacobs versus Chavez Jr. When you look at, Danny mentioned, of course, that styles make fights. What do you think of the stylistic attributes of this
I
fight?
think it's a great fight because I think you have a guy who is very, very big at the weight, which is Julio Cesar Chavez Jr. Very durable as well. I mean, you've seen him in fights with Canelo, Sergio Martinez, where he took punishment, he was able to absorb it, come back. A lot of this fight depends on Julio.
Yeah.
I find Julio a fascinating character. Like he has had his ups, he's had his downs, he's had his problems. And when you grow up as the son of a legend in Mexico and you're boxing, it can't be easy. Even his father's had his problems, So I have a soft spot for him because I think he's vulnerable. And I think sometimes someone needs to put their arm around him, which they probably haven't done in the past, and help him to try and get over things or to try and come back from fights and stuff like that. So a lot depends on him in this fight. If he can be 100% fit, 100% healthy, and more importantly, focused in the mind, it's going to be a very tough fight for Daniel Jacobs. I really believe that Daniel Jacobs at 168 will be a different fighter. Like if you would have seen what he went through to make the weight against Canelo, it weren't pretty to watch, And fighters don't want to let that go. They want to. They believe they can always make the weight, and when they make the move up in weight, they're like, I can't believe, why didn't I do this earlier? I feel great. And he will feel great at 168. But he will be the smaller man, to Chavez. So I think realistically you have to say that Danny is the favourite in the fight, but you're going like to an area in Phoenix. It's going to have a huge Mexican following there. It's also the scene of his dad's last ever professional fight at Talking Stick Arena. So there's loads of good narratives, and I'm excited for the fight. I think you have to say Danny is the favourite in the fight, but a lot depends on which Mr. Chavez Jr. turns up.
That's fascinating that you mentioned that sometimes you got to put your arm around somebody who comes from that lineage, something you can relate to. You come from a lineage of a trainer. If you could give him a single piece of advice from stepping beyond the shadow of being in a lineage, what advice would you give him from your own experience?
I spent, all my early life people calling me Barry Hearn's son, so you get a bit of a chip on your shoulder, and it can go one of two ways. It can drive you to succeed and create your own legacy, or it can make you feel like you're never going to be respected for being who you are. And I think the second bit went with Chavez Jr., where he tried to create his own legacy, failed a few times, had his problems, and then felt like, well, I'm never going to be my father, so what's the point? For me, it spurred me on. Like, we have a very close relationship, and I will always joke with my dad that now you're Eddie Hearn's dad, and he is. That's what he's become in the UK, So for me, that was my, my ambition was to take what he's achieved and take it to another level. It's more difficult for Julio because what his father achieved, he can never accomplish. Right? So it's not like, I always felt that I could be better than my dad. He can't, because his dad was amazing, like one of the greatest of all time. So that's a tougher challenge in itself, where you have to accept you're never going to be as good as your father. Right, and that's a different challenge, one that I wasn't faced with because I believed I could be better, and it's easier to reach. This is, you can't reach it, so you have to accept I'm going to just do my best in life to try and be like my father or follow the name and the legacy. And I think that's what he has to do. Is someone's got to get to him and say, you've got a responsibility as Chavez to carry forward this legacy, and you've got to act responsibly in a way that carries that name. in and out of the ring, you know. But again, like when you've got, I mean, I can't imagine now what his life was like growing up. But it was absolute madness in Mexico, in Tijuana, like, you know, like everybody taking him out, you know, trying to befriend him. I said to him earlier, no one wants you to succeed. You know that, don't you?
Of course.
People have been phoning me up. Why are you wasting your time on Chavez? Oh, he's a joke. Oh, he's this. They don't even want him to have this fight. Oh, he'll never make the weight. Oh, I was like, well, I like him. I think he's vulnerable. I think he's on the right path. And I think and don't get me wrong, he's a big name. Mm-hmm. So I'm not saying that I'm a patron saint. Right. Part of this is saying he's Chavez Jr. The Zone have a huge amount of Mexican subscribers. He's must-watch TV because he's good, he's bad, he's up, he's down. But he can fight, and he has a big following. And if he was to win this fight, my God, I mean, he becomes a major star. So, yeah, I have a little soft spot for him. And it can never have been easy for him because, you know, you got to have at least a chance to break out of the shadows, and he can never do that.
Another big fight. I'll talk about KSI Logan Paul too, but before we move on to that, the Ruiz Joshua rematch is just on the horizon. Aside from that fight, and where would you rank the heavyweight division? You know, heavyweights is back being the glamour division. It's a topic of a lot of conversation in boxing. How do you rank the current heavyweight landscape? How do you see it?
In terms of who's number one, etc.
Right. And forget the sanctioning bodies and all that. How do you rank them?
I'm very biased because I represent and love Anthony Joshua, and I've always felt that he's the best heavyweight in the world. But you know, data and records mean something. So for me, you have to say Andy Ruiz is the best heavyweight in the world because I believe Anthony is, and he beat him, rightfully. So I put him there, then I put Joshua second, then I put Fury third, then I put Wilder fourth, and then Dillian White fifth. You know, you got Usyk, Ortiz, like, you know, all these kind of guys as well. Hunter, Povetkin, they're in the mix. But you know, for me, Joshua Ruiz is for the number one spot in the heavyweight division. I really believe that on December 7th. And I respect Fury and Wilder. They're great fighters, but you know, Fury has also got the shout to say he's number one. In my opinion, he beat Wilder in that first fight. He beat Klitschko. I just think the fights that he's had in between maybe haven't sort of represented him in a way to say that he's number one, and the performances. But he's a great fighter as well. I think it's great times for the heavyweight division. You know, when Tyson Fury beat Klitschko, the division was dead, really. You know, and Joshua wasn't even on the scene. Wilder was going under the radar, and now, like, it's the hottest division in boxing. And that's really when the sport starts to flourish, when the biggest division in boxing, you know, goes on.
And lastly, KSI Logan Paul this weekend, massive interest. A lot of young people are tuning in. It's crazy. You said there's been a lot of crazy things, and it's just been mayhem since the promotion of this fight. What is the wildest thing that you've seen over the course? I mean, their back and forth is great, but
probably the amount of like super high-profile celebrities that have asked to fight the winner, and actually ones that saying to me, "Please don't say anything, but after, can we sit down?" And the size of and the other thing that's just blown my mind is, you know, we have tracking systems for sign-ups, subscriptions, pay-per-views, and one particular platform that we have is basically all the other countries that aren't with Sky Sports, DAZN, and some of our traditional broadcasters. And looking at those numbers at countries like, I mean, Saudi Arabia, Mozambique, Ethiopia, India, like countries where you think, wow, do you, like, I didn't even know that you supported boxing. And obviously this is, although it's boxing, it's also at the same time a completely new audience. So the numbers that we're seeing, like, you know, the streams for the press conferences, all that kind of stuff, and people will criticise to say, oh, well, then they're not going to stay in boxing, those people. Well, what are you going to do? Not try? Like, how do you bring new fans in? We're doing that. It's up to us to make them. You know, we're seeing our following, the fighters on the undercard following, going up just by people saying, oh, who's that? Follow. Mm-hmm. Then there's a chance for them to be a fan. So you have to just look at it as what it is. It's not going to be Hagler Hearns, right? It's two guys who have got themselves in shape, can fight a little bit, had a good first fight. They happen to be two of the biggest stars in the world, and they're having a fight. They've chose boxing to do this project. They could have done go-karting. Yeah. They could have done one-on-one basketball. It would have still been the same big TV program, but they chose boxing. So for the first fight, weren't for me. You know, and I looked at it and I started looking at the numbers and I thought, we can't ignore this. You know, so we get our criticism because especially from the hardcores, but you got to have an open mind, and you know, I'm liking what I'm seeing so far.
Thank you so much, Mr. Hearn. Always a pleasure.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.